My script here just says, intro. I didn't think of one. So a lot of people after my last video wanted me to take a look at the art of Civ 7. I can't say the name of the game without thinking of him. But when I say the art of Civ 7, I mean very specifically the Civ-specific background art that appears on the loading screens and on the back of narrative events and on the soundtrack uploads on YouTube. You know those. You've seen them before. Art is always fun to talk about because critiquing something is so much more fun than actually putting in the effort to make it. And Civ art hits that niche in a very specific way. Like, in essence, how do you represent an entire society, millions to billions of people over hundreds of years, in a single drawing? I mean, it's a tough ask, I'm not gonna lie. There's so many talented people at Firaxis, though, that pound for pound, I'd say they do a pretty good job. Like, I'm not gonna pretend these drawings are second coming of Jesus Christ or anything, but they're pretty neat. Definitely a highlight of 6 and 7. I'm doing this to myself. But we all know they're inherently a worse version of Civ 5 diplomacy screen. Why won't you bring them back, you cowards? These ones are still cool, though. I don't need to justify making videos on ever niche or Civ topics. There's an audience for it. You're here. You're part of the problem. Don't blame me. Yeah, this video is going to be a lot more freeform than my previous two. I love art. I do some drawing myself, but I've never really done proper scenescaping before, so my critiques are going to be a lot more rudimentary. And there's a reason I set my webcomic on OpenOcean. It's so I don't have to draw backgrounds. For my last two videos, I consider myself pretty educated on the subject, civilization music. I've spent the past 3 years studying the Civ 6 soundtrack to make my own Civ-style songs. I'm literally putting out an album of Civ 6-inspired music soon. I know what I'm talking about there. In graphic design, I've done a lot of that in the past, including for my recent card game. But proper art, that's a bit beyond me. So this will be more of a discussion rather than any objective, this is bad, this is good. Like, a few people said I should make a tier list out of these. I'll be real, I don't think I have enough material to do a proper tier list. So I'll just be organizing this video into a couple big aspects of the artistic design and then do a few case studies. And I have a special guest. If you frequent the Steam Workshop page for Civ 7, you might recognize Dorado, who made this sick-as-hell Portuguese mod, which notably features some really cool illustrations done in the Civ style, so this is my expert. I'll be throwing some of his comments on screen as we go along as a bit of seasoning. So if you want someone who actually knows what they're talking about instead of me waffing, then be sure to look out for it. Cool? Cool. Let's hop in. First thing I want to bring up is composition. Do you recognize this art piece? No worries if you don't, it's a bit overshadowed. This is the first in a series of 5 paintings, and if we take a look at number 4, there you go. The collection is Course of Empires by Thomas Cole. This series follows the growth and collapse of a fictional civilization, keeping the viewer perspective the same as we move through. These are masterpieces. I can literally look at them for hours. But I bring them up here because I feel like the Civ artists take a lot of inspiration from them. I mean, it makes sense. Civilization, fall of civilization is perfect. But everything from the wider landscape shots to conveying the entire vibe of a nation through one painting, it's all there. With that in mind, we could cleanly split these background arts into 2 groups. The big landscape shots and the more intimate people shots. Wait, people? Yes, in contrast to Civ 6, this game's got people in the backgrounds. I think this is a good change overall. It makes the backgrounds a lot livelier and represents some aspects of the culture we couldn't before. Also, every single one now has some sort of evidence of human settling, unlike 6 where Korean Mapuche did not have anything like that. But let's hone in on some of the more technical aspects here. Again, I'm not as familiar with this style of art, so forgive me if I get some stuff wrong here. This is really just art critique 101 stuff, so whatever. When I'm analyzing these, I'm looking for interesting perspectives, leading lines, and rule of thirds first. Perspective dictates where the horizon is on the painting and how deep the parallaxing goes. For example, some paintings have an upward view angle, some have a downward view angle. Some of them have a very flat perspective, while some are drawn in a lot more. Have you noticed something interesting while looking at all these with perspective in mind? See, in art there's a technique known as atmospheric perspective, where the camera is floating a good deal off the ground to make everything seem lighter and spacier, usually with a gradient to emphasize it. You might be familiar with a lot of Bob Ross's art. This uses atmospheric perspective a lot. Civ, however, does not use this technique. And that's a good thing. Why? Because for every single illustration, the perspective is set at the human level. And I'm pretty sure the implication is that you, the viewer, the person watching this video, and the civilization leader, you're a part of this scene. You're standing or sitting among the people of your nation, watching over them, being a part of the action. Isn't that awesome? That conveys the feeling of Civ perfectly, if that's intentional, which I think it was. The fact they normally dot the foreground with silhouettes of people further prove this. And going hand in hand with the perspective is leading lines. What are leading lines? I hear you ask. I'm not gonna tell you. It's time for some homework. Look at this and pause. What's the first thing you noticed when this illustration popped up? If I did this little experiment right, you probably should have said the palace in the middle. This for a variety of reasons, lighting included, which I'll talk about in a bit. But another reason is the leading lines. Your brain is very smart, but it's also on autopilot 99% of the time. So when you look at something, your natural instinct is to follow the lines to see where they terminate. And for Ching's artwork, the creases in the pavement and the tiles on the roof form a natural pathway for your eye to go to the palace in the center. You could also see that with this gate on Prussia, this house on Inca, the pyramids for Egypt, or this landscape on Shawnee. However, some of the paintings don't follow leading lines in this way. This doesn't have to be a bad thing, however, as the conflicting lines in Mughal sort of trap your vision in a loop around the bath, which is the most important part of the composition. It's only after turning autopilot off that you can notice, hey, there's the Taj Mahal in the background as a fun little Easter egg. Other times this forced perspective is tried, but fails. Meiji has some clear leading lines, but the bright colors on the foreground mess with your brain. And that brings me to Grease. This one never sat right with me, and I think the perspective is a big reason why. See, this one has very clear leading lines, but they draw your eye to nothing. It just terminates in the background while your brain ignores all the interesting parts of the composition. I'm not sure what the plan here was with this one. Another thing Grease fails at, and sorry to keep dogging on Grease, is the rule of thirds, which goes hand in hand with the golden ratio. Essentially, you want to put an interesting detail on each tri-section of the composition. Bonus points if you could do it vertically as well. The vertical rule of thirds is actually pretty underrated in my opinion, as putting the horizontal line at one of the intersections is a great way to emphasize the ground or the sky. 50-50 splits can be a bit weird if the composition doesn't account for it. This also goes into the golden ratio, you know, the funny little spiral people like to put on things. Well, it's actually also a good way to format landscapes. Yeah, the intended way to use it. Let's take a look at Maria and put on the funny haha spiral. The stupa here makes up about 2/3 of the real estate, because it's bisected by this curve here, which frames it very well against the rest of the shot. The next rectangle is almost entirely sky, making it the second most important part of the composition, because damn, that is a pretty sky. Finally, we move on to this building to the right with it. Which is a tertiary detail in this piece, but still follows the golden ratio cleanly. And then the spiral takes us into the houses in the background here, as well as people entering the stupa. Isn't that interesting? Following the ratio tells a bit of a story about the illustration, and the lack of perspective lines in this one specifically allows your brain to pick out the details at its own pace, probably similar to the order I just described. Okay, that was fun. Let's do another one. Normans. We start on the right with this curve taking us through the castle, and then we hit the sky again, which lines up nicely with our rectangle, before focusing on this wall, then this lady, and then the guards. Pretty neat. Oh, and the Normans actually brought up one more technical detail I wanted to mention. Foreground and background elements B00 taught me, yes, I'm taking art advice from a Minecrafter. Have you seen this guy build? He's amazing. That you want to have 3 levels to your shot. The foreground elements, which are the spears and crates here. The midground elements, which is normally the focus of the piece, in this case, the bridge and the people on it. And the background elements, the castle in this case. For a bit clearer of an example, Mississippi does this by having some of the tree branches be the foreground, which also help frame the background very nicely. Then as we follow the river, we can see all the huts and people in the center of the action, being the most important part of this art. Finally, we can follow this river to the back, seeing the much larger huts and mountains. Again, not every background follows this rule, but it's surprisingly consistent here. You know, it's almost like it's a core part of making art. Let's do this one more time for the hell of it, but this time let's do an indoor shot. For Persia, the men playing the drums, this lady and this pillar make up the foreground and frame the rest of the shot. And while the drummers are arguably the main action of the shot, they're purposely obscured in darkness and to the side so you can focus on the light coming into the castle instead. Actually, this woman is the main focus of the foreground despite being a lot more static than the drummers. Maybe a stretch, but this might be a reference to the Achaemenid Empire holding a lot more progressive of a view towards women at the time, which is awesome. Anyway, this atrium makes up the midground, which is clearly denoted by the change of lighting on the floor, which also further emphasizes the pillars. And finally, in the background, you can see the city as a whole, once again framed by the pillars. Even if they miss sometimes, I'm constantly impressed by the ingenuity of the Civ artists and delivering a story within the art. Top freaking notch. But all that's technical stuff you can point out in basically all landscape art. A hallmark of the Civ style, however, is undoubtedly the coloring of each piece. Like, each illustration has a very distinct color to it, quote-unquote. Han is green, Ming is yellow, Mongolia is white, Axum's navy blue, Spain is kind of reddish, opposite is chartreuse, Prussia is piss, the whole gang is here. The ones that aren't a single color, usually a mix of contrasting colors, like Maria's purple sky but yellow temples, the red and blue on Chola, blue and gold on Assyria, and most notably, bright red and bright cyan and Meiji. I absolutely adore this style. They did this in 6 as well. Probably better in 6, to be honest. But I love seeing how creative they get with all the lighting to achieve this. There's a technique where you can use different tinted shadows to help convey the color of the original subject, and Civ makes great use of that here. I've always heard this being called relative shading, but I cannot back that up for my life. I can't find a source for that. So if you have any clue what I'm talking about, let me know, because I'm kind of mad that I can't find a source for that term. That being said, the illustrations that come with some contrast in them are cooler than the solely monochromatic ones. Maria and Nepal, for example, are really striking, and even ones that are mostly one color like Shawnee and Diviet really benefit with some pops of color. I'm not really sure if this dogma carries over to other areas of art, but in interior design, there's the 60-30-10 rule. So I'm just gonna shove this in the analysis. So the rule states 60% of the composition should be the primary color. That's normally a more muted and subtle color, but doesn't have to be. 30% would be the secondary color, which usually plays nice with the primary color by complementing it, not intruding on it, or just fully contrasting it. And for the last 10%, you could just go nuts and choose something that really pops to make your housemates mad. Let's take a look back at Japan, because even though it flashbangs you when you look at it, there's a method to this madness. 60% cyan, 30% red, 10% pink. Mexico follows this pattern as well, blue, white, red. Some of them you need to squint a bit to see the patterns, but when you look closer, light blue, yellow, green. That's pretty epic. I should mention, if you want to do this cool color stuff, it should be justified in the art as somehow. I won't get into the content of each illustration yet, as that's going to be a future section, but I want to pay particular attention to the skies of each drawing. Contrary to popular knowledge, the sky isn't always blue. Sometimes it's cloudy or dark, or it has a sunset. I love sunsets. This game has been great for sunset lovers. I am a sunset lover. Oh, it's awesome. And the sky gives you a lot of colors to work with. There are certain ones it can't do, so my dishonorable mentions are Han and Prussia's artwork when talking about the color grading. How is Han green? Like, what justifies the color choice here? Nothing in the illustration provides a reason for it. Second is Prussia. I assume the implication is the sunset, but we can't even see the sun in the painting. If anything, the sky is less yellow than the ground. And even then, everything is super piss-colored. Way more than normal. All I'm saying is that they should have saved this yellow filter for Mexico. But yeah, the colors here are awesome overall. And while we're on the subject, and this is unrelated, but I want to show off something a little special here. See, inspired by the use of the colors in these illustrations, I went off to commission some art for another unrelated project. I asked the artist to focus on the same color vibes that I just went over here. And here's the result of that. The artist tag is linked on screen and in the description. He's great to work with. If you ever need any art made, this guy's Haber Galore approved. Yeah, I just wanted to show off these out because I'm really happy with how they turned out. Sorry to interrupt the Civ talk, but I like them. I like them a lot. Okay, one last technical detail to go over here. I know a lot of people don't care, but I care. Just like my theory for the Civ logos, there's clearly a couple different artists working on the Civ art here. I'm just eyeballing this instead of doxing any individual artist, but when you look closely at the pieces, you can pick out a few very distinct styles. One of the key aspects of this is the level of detail present, how people are drawn, and the approach to shading. This isn't comprehensive, but this is my theory on some of the artists. Artist number 1 has the least detailed and refined style, preferring broad strokes with visible brush lines. Mississippi, Mongolia, Spain are 2 key examples of this. Look at the splotchy trees in Mississippi and the Spanish foreground. Artist number 2 has a similarly less detailed style, but their art is characterized by big flat surfaces with stark lighting and clean texturing. Some examples are the Normans, Prussia, and Mexico. Look how clean these all look, for lack of a better term. Artist number 3 typically takes the smaller scale pieces, and you can distinguish them with the splotchy style on smaller details. It's present on America, Assyria, Buganda, and Khmer. There's probably a few others that are harder to pick out, but I wanted to say my favorite for last. Number 4, Rome, Qajar, Pirates, Russia. Maybe Shawnee, but I can't find the shading style on this human anywhere else. But yeah, look at this detail. It's amazing. This person's drawings are so intricate and have so many fine details. They kind of blow the rest out of the water, I'm not gonna lie. Alright. I'll stop pretending to know about technical details I barely understand. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of each illustration. The content. How do they answer the question posed at the beginning? How do you represent an entire nation's history in one image? Well, poorly for some, but I'll get into that when I get into that. I just want to start talking about the landscape-heavy ones because I am a certified nature enjoyer. A lot of civs without big material cultures get their nature shots like Hawaii, Tonga, and Mongolia. But then there's ones that actually do make buildings and they still get nature shots, namely Siam with its lake, Majapahit with its valley, and Bulgaria also with this valley. We'll give a pass to Siam because the lake is super unique. There's a huge temple in the background, and oh my god, the colors. Look at the colors, look at the reflection of the colors. This is a goated sunrise. I love sunrises, oh my god. Between their music, icon, and art, Siam is shaping up to be one of my favorite civs in the whole game vibe-wise. I kinda understand you, Andrew Johnson. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, Bulgarian Majapahit. Starting with the later, Majapahit, what happened, bud? The same people who made this get a generic grassy plain. Like, not even a fun jungle like in Sick, which would have been a unique color too, but just nothing. Ugh. And Bulgaria, what did you do? This is the only one without any humans in it at all, and it's just a painfully generic chapel in town. Like, they have such a unique architectural style, and it's just not here in the slightest. Oh, here's an idea. I'll give this one to you free, Firaxis. Bulgaria is a pillaging civ, right? Consider the following. Blood red is such a unique color vibe, and if Asika could do it in Civ 5, you can do it here. Alright, other landscape thoughts. This is literally just me listing things I like in nature or in real life, but shut up. I like mountains. Mountains are big and pretty. There are some nice mountains here. Nepal has the best mountain. Iceland also has a good one. We need more mountains, though. Uncle Civ, I want Switzerland for Christmas. I also like snow. Snog. Only one half snog at Mongol. Very sad. This bit sucks. I like the sunsets. If the art has a cool sunset, it's going high on my list. Shoutouts to Pirates, Shawnee, and Siam. Let's talk architecture before I lose it. Generally, the artists do a good vibe of capturing the building style of each civ, both inside and outside the buildings. I mean, except for Bulgaria, we already talked about that. Check out these stilt houses for Khmer. The Zacatecas style on Mexico. The super cozy Arabic architecture compared to the starkness of the Normans. Even on a smaller scale, I love them showing off the construction of the huts on the Mississippi, and the Silla pagodas being really tall and imposing for such a small scale shot. Also, I gotta mention this somewhere. The Spanish hot air balloons are cool, you guys just hate fun. Rest of the illustration is kind of cheeks though, not gonna lie. This brings me to an interesting topic. Are these buildings real? Like, did the artist make generic buildings in the style of Civ, or are they referencing actual real-life buildings? Here's the ones I could track down. Forgive me if some of them are inaccurate. This is just purely based on my own research. Russia has the Hermitage, Rome has Colosseum, Shanghai has the Mosque of Jenne, the Alhambra is there for Spain, the Golestan Palace for Qajar, Norman White Tower, Taj Mahal in the background of Mughal, Ming has a part of the Great Wall. Maria is interesting, actually. The gate is the same as the one outside the Sanchi Stupa, but the building is totally different. Pyramids also in the background for Egypt. Carthage has a big Kothon, and Axum has one of the obelisks. Don't know which one. If I missed any, let me know. This list is non-comprehensive. But that raises the obvious question. A lot of these are wonders in the game. What happens if someone else gets the wonder? Are they stupid? Anyways, just interesting to see what the priorities of the Civ artists are, which ones get the unique buildings and which ones just get the generic ones. And while we're on the topic of specific real-world bases for the art, I'd be remiss not to mention America and France. I'm not 100% on this here, but I want to say America's art is based on Don Troiani's Revolutionary War paintings. This one is the most similar vibe-wise. But for France, that's Liberty leading the people with a heavy chunk of Les Mis inspiration, and it turns out great for that. It's so different from the rest of the set, and I think it works really well. And that loops us back to the very start. How do you represent an entire nation in one image? Turns out there's a lot of ways. You could do that with good ideas and bad execution, you could have bad ideas with great execution, and then there's just some plain bad ones. I'll give my dull machete to Han. This one really misses for me. None of the iconic Chinese elements are there. I'd have no clue this represented a Chinese dynasty on its own. Aside from that, the composition's just off. The image is super flat. It's lacking details. Why is it green? One other bad one I wanted to bring up is Britain. I know this one has its fans. I really dislike it. Admittedly, this represents the vibe of Britain in the game well. Also, admittedly, the vibe they went for with Britain in Civ 7 is stupid. Like, oh, it's the largest empire in world history with a strong, distinct culture and a lot of iconic landmarks. Let's give them a factory. Yeah, that's super cool. I love smog. All I'm saying is they could have just used the World Bank screen and nobody would have complained. Some other controversial ones I should probably mention. I've seen a lot of hate for Chola. I personally like it. Like, it's kind of a bad representation of the Civ. They don't even have elephant unique unit. But on the other hand, it's got some great colors. And yeah, it's stupid, but I also think it's cool. Threads the needle well. I don't like the Mongols. I get the idea behind it, like you're riding along with them. But it's in such a different style to the rest. I can't really do it. People don't like Nepal's. I vibe with it personally. I also love how dynamic Hawaii is. But to end this video on a positive note, let's talk about my favorites. Shawnee and Siam are two of my favorites from the nature group. Love the sunsets as mentioned. Although, these are probably sunrises looking at it. Pirates here also, because of the pretty sunset. I really like sunsets. Romes and Qajars, love them based on how detailed they are. I love how they represented the iconic buildings here. I also want to throw Carthage on the list for this stunning shot of the city. And Maria for the very pretty and unique colors. So, LV7, which is my favorite. Shawnee, baby, whoa! I might be the only person that would pick this as their favorite, but look how gorgeous it is. I have no regrets. Like, I'd set this as my desktop background if I weren't such a narcissist. But let me ask. What is your favorite? I don't know why I pointed at my camera. This is an audio recording. Whatever. Which one's your favorite? Let me know down below. And while you're down there, If you can drop a sub, it'd be really appreciated. I'm looking to rank the entire Civ 6 soundtrack once I hit the 1K milestone, so if you want to see that, you know what to do. I'm looking to push one more video out by the end of this here, and somehow that one's even more esoteric than this, so if you like stupid content, this one's going to be a banger. Other than that, stay tuned for more videos about Civ 6 and 7.